urging all nations to join us in fully and totally enforcing the sanctions that I just placed on Iran.
Our one big, beautiful bill will restore the American dream and create opportunities like never before.
The Republican budget doesn't address the cost of living crisis. It makes it worse.
Hello, everyone. I'm Major Garrett in Washington. Tonight on America Decides, jumbo jets. Qatar agrees to buy 160 of them from Boeing. That during President Trump's visit there. The timing of that delivery, well, that's kind of up for grabs because you might have heard Qatar is also offering to give President Trump a luxury 747 of its own because the Boeing supplied new Air Force One behind schedule. Stay tuned.
Some people say, oh, you shouldn't accept gifts for the country. My attitude is, why wouldn't I accept a gift?
Marathon markup. House Republicans advanced part of President Trump's economic agenda after working all through the night. House Speaker Mike Johnson said today lawmakers, well, they're moving as rapidly as they can. Back on the trail, former Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg, you see him there, visits Iowa, sparking 2028 speculation. What he has to say about whether former President Biden cost Democrats in the most recent presidential race. I want to start tonight with Nancy Cordis, who joins us from Doha, Qatar. Nancy, what's most on your mind?
Well, Major, we witnessed a truly warm welcome here in the Middle East for the second day in a row for President Trump. It was initially Saudi Arabia, now Doha, rolling out the red carpet, the emir greeting him at the base of Air Force One. There were camels, there were Arabian horses, there were sword dancers, a day of pomp and ceremony capped off by a lavish state dinner at the palace just across the water behind me. The emir who greeted the president and spent much of the day with him, by the way, is the same man who offered Trump the use of that jumbo jet to replace Air Force One free of charge. They didn't talk a lot about that publicly today to reporters. Instead, it was mostly about all of the investments that Qatar is going to be doing when it comes to American companies, all the purchases it's going to make of not only those jets from Boeing that you mentioned, but also drones, other industrial technology that Qatar believes it needs to move into the 21st century and become a truly world-class economy. This is a country that is growing very quickly, Major.
And Nancy, as you well know, the Constitution is very clear about federal office holders being barred under the Constitution from accepting any gift or emolument from a prince or a foreign government. In this case, the Qatari leader is probably both. Does the president have any reaction to those and other concerns brought up about this potential gifted jet?
The president argues vigorously that this jet is being given not to him personally, but to the U.S. military for use by the President of the United States, which will be him for the next few years. But after that, the jet would go not to Trump personally, but to the Trump library. And in the view of the president, in the view of his lawyers, that means that this is all above board. I have to tell you that there are a lot of Democrats and notably a number of Republicans as well who have said they don't think that it is legal and they don't think that it is wise for the president to accept a gift of this size worth $400 million, a plane that is not equipped to serve as Air Force One. So the U.S. government would have to spend millions of dollars and potentially a year or more to retrofit it to make it capable of serving as Air Force One, only to see it retired a couple of years later.
Nancy, a big part of this trip also deals with the emerging government in Syria. What happened today?
The president sat down with the new president of Syria. That's something that that Middle Eastern leaders had been hoping he would do, had been urging him to do, because they are very, very concerned about the power vacuum that was left in Syria when the dictator Bashar al-Assad was pushed out. They're very hopeful that this new government will be stable and lead to a more stable Middle East. So part of that, they believe, is the new Syrian government being recognized by the President of the United States. There were some concerns about this meeting. The man who is now the president of Syria was once viewed by the United States as a terrorist himself, someone who had pledged his loyalty to al-Qaeda. But President Trump, at the urging of Middle East leaders, determined that the new president is saying things now that show that he has distanced himself from al-Qaeda and is potentially the best hope for Syria. So not only did he meet with him, not only did he say that he hopes that the Syrian leader will recognize Israel and normalize relations with Israel, but also the president lifted U.S. sanctions, longstanding U.S. sanctions on Syria as a means of giving that country a fresh start and the potential to grow its economy at a very sensitive time. So that's something that has been hailed here in the region and is seen as a positive sign for security across the Middle East.
In Doha, Qatar, traveling with the president, Nancy Cordis, thank you so very much. Robbie Aguaw joins me now. He is editor-in-chief of Foreign Policy magazine, and I'm quite happy to say a friend of the show. Robbie, always good to see you. As Americans watch this Middle Eastern trip of President Trump's, what do you think is the most lasting set of either developments or announcements?
I think I would say it's the fact that this is a region that is clearly a major priority for President Trump. In his first term, his first state visit was to Saudi Arabia. In his second term, he had to go to Europe for Pope Francis's funeral, but otherwise, again, Saudi Arabia would have been his first foreign trip. And of course, you tack on the fact that he is also going to Qatar and the United Arab Emirates. And I think the overall picture is a sense of coziness with these very rich Gulf states, a willingness on both sides to make transactional deals, and also with that, a deprioritization of humanitarian concerns, which is a break from previous U.S. administrations, and I think is a symbol to the rest of the world about the priorities and interests of this new administration.
And to that point, Robbie, it's my understanding that all three that you just mentioned import much of their labor. That labor is exploited. There are other human rights issues that are frequently brought up, or at least in the past have been frequently brought up by U.S. administrations. And it's my impression that all of that, which previously at least nominally concerned Republican and Democratic administrations, glossed over now.
Absolutely. There have long been concerns about labor, about human rights, about press freedoms in each of these three monarchies to varying degrees. I don't want to say they are all exactly the same, but much of that is now glossed over in this new kind of era of America First. Where Trump and his team are much more focused on a sort of raw expression of American power and American deals and a sense of, what is in his and America's naked interests rather than a more vague, amorphous sense of what is in the world's interests. And again, this is a profound break from decades of U.S. foreign policy, both Democratic and Republican, that could have ripple effects in a range of other arenas.
Robbie, talk to my audience about Syria. It is a preoccupation, understandably so, for the Israelis, has been for the Turks, has been for every Iraqi government, has been throughout the region. And for the first time, there is something that is possible there. And the president has lifted sanctions, had a brief meeting with the emerging governing structure of Syria. How important is that going forward?
It is very important for Syrians. It's very important for the region, but it is also risky. Syria, as your viewers may know, has for decades been ruled by the Assad family. And over the last 15-odd years, under Bashar al-Assad, the Syrian economy has been ruined. There's been an internal civil war. And it is only in the last 6 months or so that a sudden sort of takeover from a rebel group or a collection of rebel groups led to the fall of Bashar al-Assad and the emergence of a new leader, a man who once went by al-Jolani and now goes by Ahmed al-Sharaa, who's a former al-Qaeda militant, has also served time in U.S. prisons, but now it has sort of turned over a new leaf and intends to sort of focus on rebuilding Syria. Trump has said that he will end all U.S. sanctions on Syria, which is going to lead to a rush of investments from many of the Gulf states that Trump has been visiting this week. And again, this could have immense positive impacts for the Syrian economy, for the Syrian people. But I will say there are many who also worry about an Islamist leader with a very troubling background. And it's certainly worth keeping an eye on what that means for minorities in Syria, what it means for press freedoms and human rights.
Robbie, very quickly, it would be inconceivable for an American president to make a trip of this kind and in the past not do a stop in Jordan or Israel. Neither are on the president's agenda. What does that suggest to you and the Trump relationship with those two countries?
That America first is America first in all instances, including the Middle East. And I think Israel in particular, more than Jordan, is not going to be too happy. They obviously felt that the Trump administration would be there to their favor in every sense. And I think they, in particular, more than the Jordanians, feel that they have been left out of this round of the visit, and also are looking at diplomacy with Iran, which is happening simultaneously, and quite worried about being cut out of all of that. So in many senses, this whole trip is a setback, in particular for Benjamin Netanyahu in Israel.
Robbie Aguaw, thank you so much. Always appreciate it, sir.
Pleasure.
The House Ways and Means Committee advanced the president's tax priorities. Next were House Republicans. Well, they remain at odds over what that bill does and whether or not they can vote for it when it comes to the full floor with everything else. That's next, right here on America Decides. Welcome back to America Decides. 17 hours and 26 hours. No, I am not randomly plucking timestamps out of the sky just for because. No, I'm describing the time it took for two very important House committees to work through parts of the president's economic agenda. The House Ways and Means Committee spent 17 hours grinding through the process of approving the tax provisions. The Energy and Commerce Committee spent 26 hours grinding through the process to approve structural changes to the future of Medicaid. All of this on party line votes after this very long consideration, lots of Democratic amendments. And where does this leave us? Well, it leaves us with component parts of the Trump agenda moving forward in the House, but their path to passage still a little bit unresolved. And for insight into that path to passage, please welcome in Caitlin Huey-Burns, who joins us from Capitol Hill. Caitlin, pick it up from there.
Hey, Major. Well, some of those lawmakers fell asleep during those proceedings. So
no judgment, by the way. No judgment. No judgment on that.
I would be the same way as I was watching this on C-SPAN. Yes, we do watch it on C-SPAN. But basically, this is a monumental task, to say the least, for House Speaker Mike Johnson. If you kind of think about this like the House Republican Conference, like a seesaw, you have only 3 votes to lose, and you've got a more moderate Republican contingent that wants certain things to appease them that turns away some of the more conservative members of the conference and vice versa. So he's been trying to kind of strike this balancing act. And so there have been a lot of conversations going through. The 2 biggest sticking points, at least right now, are relate to how to cut money away from Medicaid programs. And what conservatives want to see is deeper cuts. What has come out so far is an adjustment to work requirements. But actually, those wouldn't set in until a couple of years from now. And conservatives say that is not enough. They want more. Then you have the more moderate members from blue states, high tax states, wanting a higher cap on state and local tax deductions, known as SALT. If you hear the word SALT a lot, that's what that's referring to. They believe that that's the thing that helps pay for this whole tax bill in the first place. So a lot of different constituencies that want their say in this bill. I talked to one more conservative member of the House about what he wants to see in terms of Medicaid, and I also asked House Speaker Mike Johnson where he is in all of this. Take a listen.
You're not on board with
the cuts as they are so far, right?
Right. Yeah. Right now, then the reason is that it's funny math. They're moving a lot of these cuts into the future. Some of it is a distant future, new presidential, administrations.
The work requirements.
A lot of the IRA is being phased out over time. So, and then we have waivers put in the Medicaid provisions. So if states want to, they can, the state gets to pick that they're going to issue a waiver. Since when do we give that authority to? Right now, if we're going to do waivers, it has to be approved by the federal government. We're going to turn all that over to the states.
What's the latest with the SALT group?
Ongoing discussions, very productive, very positive. We're going to get to a point of resolution on it.
Some of the conservative members have expressed that they want some deeper cuts involving Medicaid. What's been your response to that?
We're not cutting Medicaid. They want to find some more savings to shore up the program.
So still a lot to be worked out here. And House Speaker Mike Johnson says that they are expecting to vote on this by next Friday before they recess for Memorial Day weekend. It's still an uphill climb. He says don't count him out. He's been in this position before where he has eventually delivered the votes. But I can say, talking to members today, the sides are very far apart still. Now, there's also this moment that we go through with any type of big piece of legislation where everybody wants to exert their influence and signal to their constituents that they are fighting for a particular stance here. So we're seeing a lot of that too, but a lot of conversations are going to be happening between now and next Friday to actually muscle this through. And I don't even want to talk about how difficult this will be to get through the Senate. Major.
Yes, we will save the Senate exertions for another time. We'll stick with the House and all of your helpful guidance. Caitlin Huey-Burns, thanks so much. New York Republican Congressman Mike Lawler joins me now. Congressman Mike, if I may, are you yes or no on the tax component of the reconciliation bill as written? And if you're a no, why are you a no?
As it's currently written, Major, I'm a no. The cap on SALT does not adequately increase to address the concerns that I have had throughout this process. I've said since coming to Congress in 2023 that I would not support a tax bill that does not adequately lift the cap on SALT. The fact is that SALT, otherwise known as the state and local tax deduction, was capped in 2017 as a pay-for other provisions within the tax bill. It is set to expire at the end of the year and revert back to unlimited. Now, while I would certainly welcome unlimited SALT, the reality is that it would be associated with an increase in the AMT, a reduction of the standard deduction. It would be the largest tax increase in American history. So we all have to negotiate in good faith. Unfortunately, the Ways and Means Chair did not do that through this process. And so we are now in the process of negotiating with the Speaker.
Did the chairman of the Ways and Means Committee handle this in good faith? Because Nick LaLotta, your Republican colleague, says he didn't.
To be honest, I mean, I'm very disappointed in the way that this was handled. The fact is that everybody has known for 2+ years that this issue had to be addressed. We have been asking for meetings and conversations for months, only to be told that it would happen. And then subsequently, they tried to jam us with a number. And I, for one, am not getting rolled on an issue that matters this much to my constituents. And ultimately, we have elevated this to the Speaker, and so we're going through the process now.
Do you trust that process with Speaker Mike Johnson?
Look, we are working through it. I think the Speaker is trying to negotiate in good faith, and I think we will get to a resolution because we have to. The fact is, if we don't pass a tax bill, it'll be the single largest tax increase in American history, and that's not something I support. At the same token, I'm not going to just settle for a number that was shoved down our throats by the Ways and Means Committee.
The bill, as I understand it, does not address no tax on tips, no tax on overtime, and barely touches Social Security. Is that also a problem for you?
That's not true. The bill does address no tax on tips and no tax on overtime. Social Security cannot be touched in this process. I know under reconciliation, but I know that there is an effort as part of the standard deduction to really focus in on providing relief for our seniors. A lot of the provisions that the president championed, including lifting the cap on salt, are going to be part of the final bill.
Do you think that final bill will be passed by next week?
I know that's the speaker's goal and objective. We are going to work in good faith to get to an agreement on salt. We're having a meeting tomorrow with the speaker, and hopefully we can make progress.
What's the number? What is your bottom line number, Mike, on state and local tax deduction?
You know, I've read The Art of the Deal, Major, and I'm not going to negotiate it with you in public. But the fact is, we are in process of negotiating. It is significantly more than what is in the Ways and Means bill. And again, to me, this is about fairness. It's about ending double taxation. It's about providing real tax relief to the middle class. And that's what we're fighting for here.
Congressman, play this scenario out for me. President gets on the phone and says, you got to vote for this. I can't fail. This legislation can't fail. I'm not going to be the president who's going to have the biggest tax increase in American history. I know you're unhappy. I'll fix it later. You've got to vote for this. Tell me, Mike Lawler, are you going to tell the president under that scenario, I can't help you?
Not that I can't help you. We need to work to find a resolution. I mean, the fact is that if the tax bill expires, SALT comes back unlimited. And the president would never accept the terms of this deal as presented. And neither are we. So obviously, you know, if it comes to it that we need to negotiate with the president, we will. But the objective, obviously, is to address this in the House and get it done. So that's what we're working towards. But ultimately, if we can't find agreement, then yeah, we're going to have to deal with the White House on it.
And what is your level of concern that you pass it through the House, you're satisfied, and your Senate Republican colleagues undo it all, or most of it?
Again, if it doesn't happen, there's not going to be a bill because I won't vote for it. So, you know, I'm negotiating in good faith. We're going to come to an agreement, and folks are going to have to abide by the agreement. The margins are what they are, and you need 218 votes in the House. And the fact is, there are 6 of us that have been very clear on this.
And when are you going to announce for governor, Congressman?
Right now, I'm focused on this. We'll take a look. Obviously, we're still in the process of looking at it, but we'll make a decision in a short while.
And very quickly, are you for or against the President of the United States accepting a gift of a 747 from the government of Qatar?
Look, I have great concerns about it. As chair of the Middle East and North Africa subcommittee, I've had great concerns about Qatar and, frankly, some of their entanglements in the Middle East, especially with Iran and Hamas. So, you know, I have concerns about it. I've asked for more.
Is it a bad idea? Is it a bad idea, Mike?
Yeah. Look, I think from the standpoint of accepting a gift from a foreign government of that magnitude, certainly. But I've asked for more information, and we're looking into it.
Congressman Mike Lawler, Republican, New York. Thanks so much for your time.
Thank you.
So, could Democrats have won the 2024 election if, what a large if this would have been, President Biden had never been on the ticket? A former key member of his administration says, well, possible. More details ahead here on America Decides. Welcome back. Thanks for staying with us. Former Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg, well, creating a little bit of buzz about possible 2028 run after showing up in Iowa, kind of a campaign-looking like appearance, and there he acknowledged kind of a hard truth that Democrats are having to cope with, that they might have won if former President Biden had not sought re-election. Listen.
Would the party have been better off if he just not run for re-election?
Maybe, and you know, right now with the benefit of hindsight, I think most people would agree that that's the case.
Joining me now, Hunter Woodall here in the Washington, D.C. Bureau. Hunter, what do you make of all that?
Major, the thing that I can't quite shake about everything we're hearing from Democrats, especially these prominent ones that could run for higher office, especially in 2028, is a lot of them did not speak out, obviously, when then President Biden was running in that re-election run back in 2024.
Not a peep.
Not a peep. And that's the thing. When I talked to many, several House Democrats who actually, had called on then President Biden to drop out of the race after that debate performance last summer. And, they were pretty willing to say, hey, he should have dropped out sooner, or something, along those lines. And it's just interesting, hearing these candidates that could run, or potential candidates that could run in the future, saying, hey, now we're going to talk about this. But they clearly want to talk more about the future. And it just seems like, voters might be holding them to account about, hey, what did you do in 2024, and what did you know about the then president?
More importantly, what did you not do? Speaking of someone who might be eyeing the 2028 race in a futuristic way, Rahm Emanuel, making the rounds, former chief of staff to President Obama, covered him when he was in the House. He was on The View, and he said this about where America is and what he might do. Let's listen.
Everybody in this audience, they just want one thing, their kids to have a shot. And the problem is Washington's giving them the shaft. Yep. And that is wrong.
This sounds like a presidential candidate. You sound like a presidential candidate.
No, I am in training. I don't know if I'll make the Olympics, though.
Hunter, that's practically a declaration. I'm in training? What do you mean? Look, let's say you're in. Go ahead.
It's that time where, we're hearing these Democrats who may run for president in the future, everybody's sort of testing out that message. How much do you dive in and say, hey, I'm really looking at this? I look back on the 2020 cycle, I think one of the first Democrats to announce a run was John Delaney, then a Maryland congressman who's a Democrat. Nobody wants to be John Delaney. So everybody's being pretty careful about this. But it's clear, many Democrats have interest in this, and they're going about it in myriad of ways that, there's no set way to go about this. And it goes from, are you going to give a speech? Oh, are you going to go on The View and talk about it? Are you going to be coy? You're running. You might not run. Oh, I don't know. Present tense, past tense, future tense, whatever. Lots of different approaches here so far.
Way to break it down, Hunter. And I know Rahm Emanuel, I know John Delaney. They are never going to be confused with one another. Hunter, thanks very much. I want to bring in our political panel. Sophia Kai and Jake Traylor, both of Politico, a Politico doubleheader here at the desk. Who wants to jump in on Rahm Emanuel first? Raise your hand, please. Sophia, go ahead. Your eyes are sparkling. I'm calling you first.
He's been around for a while, and I should say that when Biden did drop out, Rahm Emanuel started to become very active. He started texting a lot of reporters in Washington. Yep. So, look, I think the broader conversations around concerns about former President Joe Biden, they started happening when he was president. The difference is they moved from being in private to being in public. I should say that back in 2023, my former colleague Alex Thompson and I had reporting on the just-in-case primary. What was the just-in-case primary? Right. The just-in-case primary was all the same names that we're talking about now. Gretchen Whitmer, Cory Booker, Pete Buttigieg. They were running, a bit of like a shadow kind of just in case, putting out feelers in the very same primary states, just in case something happened to Biden.
Right. And Jake, that thing didn't happen until it had to happen. That's right. And it seems to me, to Hunter's point, anyone who's going to Iowa or Pennsylvania or anywhere else on the early primary or caucus calendar is going to be asked and better have an answer that is responsive to Democrats being a little more than mildly ticked off about what transpired.
That's right. You don't make a wrong turn into Iowa. Pete Buttigieg, he very clearly was.
Oh, where am I?
Exactly right. There's a reason he's there, and he did really well there in 2020. Remember, he won. Yeah. He got more votes there than any Democrat at the time in 2020. I think we're seeing across the aisle, Democrats have to answer this question of how do we respond to 2024 and what took place. We're seeing, people taking different approaches. California Governor Newsom has an approach where he's really embracing some of the MAGA individuals. Then you have AOC and Bernie kind of going on this defiance tour. Buttigieg is finding himself somewhere kind of in the middle, which is something he normally skillfully does well. He, though very much so, passed on a gubernatorial bid in Michigan, passed on a Senate bid in Michigan, finds himself in Iowa, is talking very presidential-like. You saw right there in that shot earlier, he's having to toe this line of awareness that Biden potentially wasn't the candidate. But they're also having to answer how long did he know about that, and then how does he message going forward?
Sophie, I want to talk to you about some reporting you've done about the Doge caucus on Capitol Hill. Now, 3 or 4 weeks ago, all of us were still talking quite energetically and curiously about Doge. That has seemed to drop almost entirely off the map. How's the initiative, the impetus behind it? Because now Elon Musk is sort of wandering away and it's not really happening much anymore?
Yeah, so, the story of the Doge caucus on the Hill is sort of like the story of Doge, right? In the beginning, in December, November, there was a lot of interest,
right.
Dozens and dozens of members. Everyone wanted to be a part of the Doge caucus. Elon and Vivek came to the Hill.
Hot ticket on Capitol Hill.
Yes. They said, we're going to have congressional involvement in these cuts. That never happened.
No.
So over 2 months, you had the bulk of the cuts. Now that's slowed down in part because they've been held up by the courts. Elon's also left, so, the head of this operation is no longer in D.C.
And the X account where Doge tries to tabulate its savings keeps getting revised, and the revisions are not up. The revisions are down, meaning less and less savings.
Have been down, and I think the Doge caucus looks at that, and there's not much they can do. So we had a member of that caucus, Jared Moskowitz, who told us yesterday that the Doge caucus is dead. And, I think it's important to note this also comes as the White House efforts to codify the Doge cuts by sending a rescissions package to Congress.
To Capitol Hill, to get Congress to do that through the process.
For now.
Yeah.
I was on the Hill yesterday and I spoke to some Republican senators, and several of them told me that this is probably not going to pass. And so the White House today, a White House official told me that they're going to give themselves more runway, 2 more years to get this thing done. They're not going to do it now. It's not their priority.
When it comes to Doge, as the kids used to say about 20 years ago, JK. Talk to me, Jake, about Reid Hoffman. There were lots of heavyweights in Saudi Arabia with the president. Lots of tech people, lots of industrialists. He wasn't there. Kind of a conspicuous or maybe near conspicuous absence. Walk me through that.
Well, it was kind of funny because the White House put out in a piece of communications that Reid Hoffman would be in attendance. Then Reid Hoffman's chief of staff posted on X a photo with him at lunch where he very clearly was not in Saudi Arabia, saying, actually, he's at lunch here. So I don't think it's entirely shocking that Hoffman didn't attend. He has been very vocally supportive of Harris during her presidential run, not so supportive and close with Musk or Donald Trump. But I do think it's notable that on this foreign trip in Saudi, we have dozens upon dozens of these executives, these tech executives who, if Trump 1.0 in his first administration, we were not seeing this take place. Now he goes to Saudi Arabia and he's greeted by dozens of these significant individuals who are cozying up to Trump to curry favor for I think, a couple of reasons. One, they're in Saudi Arabia because they have potential heavy pocketbook individuals there in Saudi that they're hoping to get into America for their companies. But secondly, they're looking to cozy up to Donald Trump because these tariffs that are still in effect have drastically affected a lot of the companies and individuals that are there. So it's just very telling, this look versus Trump's first Saudi trip in his first administration. We didn't see this at all.
You got to go where you can create dialogue to see that your interests are at least heard and possibly attended to. And they're talking. Jake Traylor, Sophia Kai, an outstanding Politico doubleheader. Thank you both.
Thanks for having us.
Democratic National Committee drama. Well, you've probably heard something about that. The DNC is moving toward voiding, possibly, elections of 2 of its sitting vice chairs. One of them will join me next to discuss. You're watching America Decides. Welcome back to America Decides. What we're about to talk about next may sound dense, highly procedural, way deep in the weeds of the Democratic National Committee, and it is all of those things, but that doesn't mean it's not important. It's an insight into the kind of internal conversations within the Democratic National Committee, which will inform the kind of decisions it makes going forward. So what are we talking about? Well, the DNC is in the initial process of revising or revisiting elections of 2 vice chairs. One of them is David Hogg, the other is Malcolm Kenyatta. Now, this matter is connected to a complaint about the way the procedures underlying those 2 elections was conducted. But Hogg is claiming that almost all of this is due to his plans to use a substantial amount of money in a super PAC to primary what he calls asleep at the wheel House Democrats. Hogg put out a statement that read in part, "It is impossible to ignore the broader context of my work to reform the party, which loomed large over this vote." Well, for a very sharp perspective on this because he's very much involved and implicated. Pennsylvania State Congressman and Vice Chair of the Democratic National Committee, Malcolm Kenyatta, joins me now. Malcolm, it's great to have you at the table. Thanks so much for coming in. When I said you're implicated, your election as Vice Chair is also thrown into somewhat of kind of, we don't know, because of this challenge. Hogg says it's all about trying to knock him out and his efforts to reform the party, and he's kind of a victim in all this, or implies that. I know you have some thoughts on that. Please share them with me.
So first of all, I'm happy to be with you, but with you on the silliest of topics. I know that there are folks at home right now who are asking, genuinely asking, you know, down the street from where we are, Republicans are cutting Medicare, Medicaid, are putting us in a position where the modern-day social safety net is going to be shredded, all so that they can make room to fund tax breaks for billionaires and millionaires across this country. That's what we should be talking about. But if we are going to talk about internal Democratic Party nonsense, we have to at least do it honestly. And the problem I have, and I talked about it online, and we'll talk about it in some detail today, is that David has such a casual relationship with the truth. He understands, like I understand, that this complaint about the procedural mechanisms of the election was filed back in February. The only reason it's being heard now is because of the due process standards that we have within the Democratic Party, where the person who filed the complaint gets an opportunity to put forward evidence, to put forward her claim. We then get 30 days to respond to her. Then there has to have a meeting set up. And so when I saw David's statement aligning this with this myth that he has been the target of, you know, some Democratic Party smear campaign against him, it really frustrated me. And I was in a position where, as much as I don't want to lean into, feed into Democrat versus Democrat, you know, nonsense when we have very serious things happening in the country, I cannot allow him to continue to go out and say things that he knows not to be the truth. And so to put out a statement like the one he put out, when he received information about this challenge well before he made any announcement about Leaders We Deserve, is to say to all these people who are listening to him and looking to him to be a voice of honesty in this moment, people have to question that. He's not telling the truth, and I'm going to be here today, unfortunately, to correct that record.
How do you evaluate David's sentiment that he should use money, and it's within his right to use money from donors to target what he calls asleep at the wheel House Democrats, meaning those who are not as engaged in the fight along some of the lines you just referred to as they should be?
Listen, the Democratic Party needs to change in a big way. That's why I ran, okay? I did not run because I thought everything was going great. I ran because I thought that there were big things that we have to change. But I think for the Democratic Party to change and to be a party that is strong enough to meet this moment, the way we accomplish that is not by 9 people who are elected to lead the DNC trying to dictate the outcomes of our primaries. The way we build a strong Democratic Party that can meet this moment is by doing the unglamorous work that I've been doing now for over 100 days, making sure we have the technological and the human talent to power a DNC that can reach voters wherever they are. And it also means we have to unify our party. Obviously, we're not there right now. Unfortunately, that's why we're having this conversation. And the noise of the internal bickering among Democrats has become so loud that we are not listening to the American people. I've been across this country listening to the American people, and this is what they want us to do. They want us to talk about what I think is the unifying message of the Democratic Party. They want us to talk about how we're going to make their life better. When people ask, what are the Democrats about, Major, you can say you heard from the vice chair of the DNC. Democrats are about 3 words: make life better for Americans. Donald Trump has spent 104 days making life worse, making life better for himself and for billionaires, but not making life better for the mom who's being squeezed and not even able to really sit with her kids because she's working that extra shift. They haven't been making life better for workers who want to be able to join a union. That's why Democrats are fighting for the PRO Act, fighting to raise the minimum wage. Democrats want to make life better by defending Medicare, Medicaid, and Social Security, expanding it to cover things like dental. That is what we should be talking about. And for the last couple of weeks, David has not been coming on these programs talking about that. He's been coming on these programs to talk about David. And as unfortunate as it is, Because when I got elected and he got elected, I was looking forward to having another young person who wanted to be in the trenches doing the work of this party. But I want to be clear, reforming the Democratic Party does not mean spending every single day doing interviews saying Democrats suck. There is a limit to how being self-deprecating is going to move us in the direction that we need to go. Our chair, Ken Martin, put forward the most ambitious reform package that we have seen in Democratic Party history. A part of that reform package included the neutrality pledge that I know David has spoken about. David sat in a meeting with me where Ken laid out that vision well before David ever said he was going to do whatever he's doing with Leaders We Deserve. And he even took that reform package, which is the most dynamic, bold reforms we've ever had in the Democratic Party, and even made that about himself. So we're in a position right now where we need to keep the main thing, as the coach of the Super Bowl winning Philadelphia Eagles say. And the main thing is working people are getting screwed over by Republicans right now, and Democrats want to make people's lives better.
Bottom line, is the DNC better with or without David Hogg as vice chair?
The bottom line is this. The Credentials Committee said they want a new election. I just put out a letter to the chair asking him to expedite those new elections. I look forward to new elections and to taking my vision of what I've done for 100 days and taking it everywhere.
If David is reelected, you're good with that?
Listen, my hope is this, that the same people who brought David onto their programs to hear from him will actually bring me onto their programs to hear from me and hear the actual work that's being done. If David wants to join me in that work, I look forward to having him.
David's been on this program, and now so have you.
There we go.
Kenyatta, thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
A reversal from California Governor Gavin Newsom. Next, the walkback that has California conservatives, yes, California conservatives, cheering. You're watching America Decides. Welcome back. California's Democratic Governor Gavin Newsom is catching quite a bit of attention by proposing to scale back free health care in California for undocumented immigrants. Under his new proposal, undocumented immigrants aged 19 and older would no longer be able to apply for the state's Medi-Cal insurance program. This would start next year if approved. The move follows a Trump administration announcement that it will investigate California for providing cash assistance to some undocumented immigrants. I want to bring in our political correspondent, Nydia Cavazos, who joins me from Los Angeles. Fill in the blanks, Nydia, and walk us through the reaction.
Major Governor Gavin Newsom announced earlier this morning that California is currently facing a deficit of over $12 billion. And in order to ease some of these economic concerns and make up for the state revenue, he's proposing scaling back on a state program that allows undocumented immigrants to receive free health care. And this would apply to anyone living in the country illegally over 19 years or older, and this would also start as of January 2026. And what this means is that anyone who is already enrolled wouldn't necessarily be kicked out, but they would have to pay a monthly premium of $100. And what this also means is that any new enrollees would be banned from subscribing or entering this health program as of 2026.
Nydia Cavazos from Los Angeles, thank you very much. I appreciate it. That does it for today. I'll be back with another edition of America Decides tomorrow at 5 p.m. Eastern. The Daily Report, that's coming up next, right here on CBS News 24/7.